Good morning, I'm Ty Blackford. I'm President and CEO of CHPRC.
Good morning, I'm John Eschenberg. I'm the President of Washington River Protection Solutions.
Good morning, I'm Brian Vance from the Department of Energy, Manager of the Office of River Protection and the Richland Operations Office.
Good morning, Val McCain. I'm the Project Director for the VIT plant, Bechtel National.
Good morning, I'm Bob Wilkinson, President for Mission Support Alliance.
Good morning, and it's really a pleasure for us to be here today to represent the Hanford site in a little bit of a different way than we have historically done, focused on the past, present, and future view of our work here. The Hanford site, we have about 350 federal employees on board overseeing the work of 8,000 to 9,000 people on the site, allocated across our prime contractors for a site that's about 580 square miles in size, with an annual budget of about $2.5 billion per year. Our single focus as a Department of Energy, as the customer for the site, is the safe, effective, and efficient cleanup of the Hanford site. It's a singular mission, we have a singular purpose, and we work together with our contractors to execute that important work. As we've talked about the Hanford site in the past, we've not always focused on the broader perspective of history here at the Hanford site, which I think is an important backdrop to where we are today and where we're moving in the future. So we'll start with a view of the Hanford site at its beginning, as this is the 75th anniversary of the B reactor and the T plant going into operation, which was a part of the Manhattan Project, set the course for the end of the World War II, and started the national security mission that for us lasted more than 4 decades long through 1989. As we think about the site as it was constructed in support of Manhattan Project and before and beyond, this really does represent a great public work of the last century, given the amount of work and the history that this site has in support of our national security mission and the objectives of the nation. At the height of the project, or at the height of the site, we had 9 operating reactors throughout its history, with all the infrastructure and facilities to support that. 20 million pieces of uranium metal fuel were produced here and the associated facilities to support that. 110,000 tons of fuel were processed through 5 different extraction plants, resulting in 177 underground tanks with what is today 56 million gallons of waste. But that effort produced 66% of the nation's plutonium, which was 76 tons. And the focus of the site during that period was predominantly on the national security mission. So environmental protection, which was at its infancy at the beginning of this effort, was and progressed throughout, was a secondary priority to the national security mission. In 1989, we transitioned to this national cleanup effort at the Hanford site, and with the start of a tri-party agreement that was signed between the Department of Energy, the Washington Department of Ecology, and the Environmental Protection Agency, which has set the course in many ways for the cleanup effort that we've been executing over the last 30 years. So this is our 30th anniversary of our cleanup effort as well. That agreement started with 161 milestones, which has increased over time as the work was progressed, because at the point where the document was signed, environmental cleanup was effectively a new science. And over the last 30 years, we've completed over 1,600 milestones, largely on schedule, as we executed this important work. And again, our focus has been overall to reduce the risk along the Columbia River and move towards the Central Plateau, where we're building the infrastructure for the longer-term mission that will be executed for the tank waste cleanup effort. So the effort to date, in large measure, I'll talk briefly again at the end, has been a phenomenal cleanup effort. And I'll show some representations of what cleanup looks like on the site. And you can see, we'll walk through a series of the reactors, the before and after picture, to show the significant amount of work that's been accomplished to eliminate the infrastructure and place the 6 of the 9 reactors so far in interim safe storage. You can see as we walk through, and I'll just highlight, please look at the amount of infrastructure that was required to support these reactors when they were operating. And you can see the phenomenal amount of work that's been accomplished over time to reduce that risk to the Columbia River, remove that infrastructure, and really just get down to the reactors that are cocooned and in interim safe storage and will be there for the longer term until they're ready for future disposition. Really a phenomenal effort that took the work of many, many people on this site over a very long period of time to deliver this kind of progress in the period that we're talking about, which for the reactor effort really was in the mid to 2000s to the mid 2015, 2016 timeframe. This is the 300 area. This is the before picture. This is where the fuel processing was accomplished. And if you'll anchor your view on the one plant with the stack in the mid to low right-hand corner, you can see the phenomenal amount of work north of that facility that was accomplished to remove those facilities. And we've actually transitioned to placing signs out on the site to show where cleanup has occurred, because after cleanup's completed, it looks like the rest of the landscape. And so people often forget how much work has actually been accomplished to achieve that spectacular outcome in all these reactors and all these sites across the entire site. So with that, I'll turn it over from a past, present, and future perspective. I'll turn it over now to Ty Blackford to talk about a little bit more of the current state, and we'll work through the contractors here at the table with me today, and then I'll summarize the national cleanup effort, or the environmental cleanup effort to date as a backdrop and to set the stage for our future mission. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ty.
Thank you, Brian. So as Brian noted, significant progress has occurred. And I think some of us will remember back in 2008, let's go back just 10 years, 11 years now, the department came up with Vision 2015. And then after that, Vision 2020, if we will all recall that. Vision 2015 was geared to protect the river. So as you've seen, clean up the river corridor, get off the river. Of course, a major portion of that for us is, of course, groundwater. Groundwater is one of the major contributors, or was one of the major contributors to potential threats to the Columbia River. So this slide here, we have installed an awful lot of groundwater infrastructure over the years with the department. And I'm proud to say that that vision of protecting the river, if you just see this slide right here, this is a plume of the hexavalent chrome along the just north of the reach. And you can see those plumes have actually shrunk and come away from the river. So that system, those processes as part of that vision are indeed working. Right now we have miles and miles, hundreds of miles of pipe, several pump and treat facilities. Every year we pump new and higher amounts of groundwater. This last year alone, just a little under 2.5 billion gallons of groundwater was treated. And we are working right now with the department to increase that capacity even further, to treat more groundwater as we move up to the Central Plateau. Of course, we have talked about the reactor processes and, of course, 100K. Here's a picture of 100K in 2010. If we look a little bit further, that's what 100K looks like today. So most of the 200 or the 100K east areas, the reactor area to the east, is removed. The only thing that's left is the reactor. As a matter of fact, most of the clear wells, the settling ponds, all of that stuff has been remediated, removed, and covered. So progress continues to be made. Recently, we just completed one of the last major key points that we needed to take care of. If we will recall, the K-basins for a lot of years held fuel. That fuel corroded and caused a lot of problems for us and concerns for us as a community, contractors, and the Department of Energy. So major technical hurdles had to be overcome in that regard. We went through fuel recovery, sludge consolidation, found fuel. Some of us will recall found fuel as we had to go deal with that, and as well the knockout pots. That's all been accomplished, and just last month we did finish the last of the sludge removal from the K area, a major linchpin right now for us to be able to finish the 100K area and finish the K West reactor. So we're actively right now in the process of removing debris, characterizing that, cleaning out the cells, and we're within a few years right now of closing the 100K area for good. So significant progress continues there with a little bit more to do, but we got to remember where we came from. I think we also need to remember is there's hundreds and hundreds of sites that have been cleaned up on the Hanford site. Burial sites, cribs, ditches, you name it, it has been out there. We just recently finished one of the last major cleanups, the 61810 burial ground, some will recall, which is actually along a major highway which goes to Energy Northwest and has public access. It's just a few miles from us right here. Most of us know where that is. And I'm proud to say is that particular job, as you can see, is now finished. This actually is a little bit different. As Brian told you earlier, now it's hard to see because the grass has grown back, the tumbleweeds are thriving, and we have returned to that natural landscape. So we just completed that this last winter, and it's working, and we are now recovering that land. Quite the feat for a job that everyone said would never be done, that couldn't be done. But we need to look a little bit further as we go forward, of course. We're continuing on the 300 area. As Brian showed you, the 324 facility, certainly a major concern to all of us, just because of its proximity to the community of Richland. We're in the active progress right now on that particular project with doing what we call our facility modifications. As everyone will recall, there was a plume that was found underneath that building, which, when that building was being prepared for demolition previously, stopped that process. We are now in the progress of actually modifying the facility and revamping the facility to bring it to a point where we can actually remove the floor from underneath the building, use the building as protection, and remove that soil from within the building, which will facilitate our ability to tear that building down in the future. Again, that project is moving along very well. We have the support to continue those activities. We are moving along on it, and we're within a few years of finishing that project up as well. Cesium strontium capsules, another major concern to all of us and to the communities. I'm pleased to say that designs have been completed on that project. We actually are in this year starting to move forward with construction, testing, demonstration, and preparation to actually start removing the capsules within the next couple of years and finish that up by 2025. That resolves that risk for everybody. Now we don't have to worry about capsules anymore representing a risk to the workers, the public, or the site. Plutonium finishing plant. Another major challenge, one of the most contaminated facilities in the world, has presented quite a few challenges, and we have learned a lot from it over the years. Pleased to report this picture is actually a little out of date. Right now, we just finished yesterday what we call the lower risk portion of demolition, actually day before yesterday. And it's basically, there's not much of that facility left, but we still have work to do. And that work is moving into what we call the second phase of demolition, the final phase. We'll be starting that, as a matter of fact, next week. That will continue on for the next couple of months. But literally, the plutonium finishing plant 234.5Z should be done within the next few months. That's the picture as of yesterday. But we need to think about what we have learned as well, and going forward, what the function of the Central Plateau really is as we move along into the future. So if we look at what is present, now we look into the future. You know, we've completed the final tasks along the river corridor. As we finish those up, we're all moving to the Central Plateau. That was the plan. Get everybody off the river, move up to the plateau. that creates its own problems. That creates its own challenges. Footprints is up on the plateaus is pretty tight. When you have tank farms, a waste treatment plant, a waste management facilities and all that go with that, and demolition and risk reduction. So everything that I potentially do has the potential to affect John and his task, Val and her task, Bob and his task to support infrastructure, as well as I rely on Bob to provide me infrastructure so that we can manage these risks. You see the picture down below, the Purex waste tunnels. I believe all of us can remember the lesson that the Purex waste tunnels taught us. And that is, if it goes wrong, it affects all of us. And that includes our communities, that includes the region. So we have learned from that, and we are now actively looking forward to what are the next levels of risk reduction that we need to deal with to protect the mission going forward, which is tank retrievals and making glass. So we have a lot of areas, the redox facility, which you see up in the upper right corner. We have to work with that because we have a laboratory sitting right next to it that the WTP and tanks depend upon. Plutonium finishing plant, you can see the projection of what it will look like in just a few months, but we're not done. There's still risks there that need to be taken care of. And they're not visible because they're below ground. So there's still a lot of work for us to do on the Central Plateau and learn how to work through those processes. And of course, the last, as you see in the lower right, is our new disposal facility that we are now working to bring up online, which will support directly the disposal of glass that will be made from the WTP. So a lot of progress being made, a lot of progress going right now, and a lot of work to do into the future. And with that, I think we'll start talking a little bit about the future and turn it over to Mr. Eschenberg.
Thanks, Ty. Washington River Protection Solutions is a company that's 3,000 people strong. And those 3,000 people are focused on one objective, and that's to make glass. And while we don't actually make the glass, Val's team will, we support the waste treatment plant in three specific ways. First, we consolidate waste from the older single shell tanks into the newer double shell tanks. Secondly, we're focused on rebuilding our infrastructure, and this is the infrastructure to supply waste to the waste treatment plant. That consists of an underground series of pipes and utilities. We want to make sure that we've got a very dependable, reliable, and durable means to supply waste to WTP. And then thirdly, we're focused on other infrastructure improvements, including what's called the tank side cesium removal capability. And that's where we'll actually pre-treat the waste before we send it over for vitrification. So those are our three principal focus areas, but again, it's all about making glass for us. And so with that, I'd like to walk you through a quick video. If we could play the video, please. So here, this is our tank retrieval operations. These are operators at a console. Today, we've retrieved 10% of the total tank inventory. We're working on tank AX102 now. Here we have operators at the console. Our retrieval method is robotic. We use a series of high pressure water, low pressure water, hot water to dissolve and move the materials in the tank for removal. This is a picture of a tank when the waste has been completely removed. It's a mosaic picture, a little difficult to discern. Infrastructure improvements. Here we're doing a briefing on site. You'll see that this is a pump removal activity. You can see it's labor intensive. This is much like the Stanford Marching Band. It's a well choreographed event. This takes the better part of a day. It's high hazard work. This particular pump's about 65 feet long. It's a slow, deliberate operation. Here we're upgrading some of the infrastructure to support tank waste retrievals. That's actually a new hot water heater. I mentioned the tank side cesium removal capability. This actually treats the waste. This is a view looking to the south. This is the closest tank farm. It's called East Farm. You can see the waste treatment plant in the background. Waste will come into what's called AP farm, which is the closest tank farm to the waste treatment plant. The waste is processed through the tank side cesium removal system. We use ion exchange to pull out the radionuclides. When the ion exchange columns are loaded, they're actually stored on the pad there. You see the small forklift. And then waste is fed forward to the WTP for vitrification. This is a view of an ILAW canister. You see the carousel there. When the glass is poured, they're loaded into the canisters and they're taken to on-site shallow land disposal. For us, it's all about protecting the environment and protecting the river. Okay, so at the top line, it's all about risk reduction. You see what we're doing, all of us here, we're all about reducing the risk to the community, to the environment, to the Columbia River. Infrastructure improvements, we talked a lot about that. We're investing millions and millions of dollars to upgrade the infrastructure to support not only the feeding waste to the WTP, but it's also about treating the effluents that come back from WTP. So it's a very interconnected, integrated system. Therein the need to make sure that we have high confidence in the reliability of all of our support systems, whether it be the effluent treatment facility, whether it be our evaporator, or the means by which we supply waste for vitrification. For us, in the lower left-hand corner here, accelerated operations. When Val and her team energize the low-activity waste melters, that's a big day for all of us at the table. And it's big because the melter, and Val will talk about this, but once you turn the melter on, you can't turn it off. And so we have to make sure that all of us have the means where we can reliably support that operation of the melter. And we do that, it's 24/7, it's around the clock, there's no days off, there's no holidays, we have people here around the clock. And so that pace of operations for all of us is going to increase dramatically. Brian touched on it. We've not had full-scale production operations on this site in decades. And to transition from what's principally a day shift operation into round-the-clock operations requires a huge shift in everything that we do, from a cultural perspective to how we staff and man all of our individual work fronts. The last piece I'll just mention here, a little bit of bragging. We are leveraging advanced technologies and digital transformation. We're all familiar with digital transformation and how it's literally changed the world in everything we do, from healthcare to training. We've also taken advantage of those technologies and digital transformation in what we do to manage the tank farms. So for example, we've consolidated a number of our control rooms into a singular control room. We've gone from clipboards and pens to taking shift rounds with an iPad. So this true digital transformation, it's safer for our workers, it's more efficient, it's more predictable, and it's all about, for us, it's about making sure we're as efficient as we can and supplying waste and supporting the waste treatment plant. That's what we're all about. And so with that, Val, I think I'm gonna pass it
Great. Thank
to you.
Thanks, John. Okay. Good morning, Val McCain. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some of the VIT plant story with you this morning. You can see in this very first photo here how the job site looked early on in the project, kind of the first chapter of our story. You know, back then the plan was for WTP to be a pilot plant. The initial conceptual design was for a small-scale set of facilities intended to treat a limited amount of the tank waste. And over the course of the project's development, as more became known about the tank waste and characterization activities continued, the design and execution strategy for the plant evolved into a massive full-scale set of facilities. So it shifted from that pilot plant to a full plant with higher throughput. So as many of you know, and as John talked about, today what we're implementing is the DFLAW portion, which is going to get us to treating the low activity waste first. And so I'm going to give you a snapshot of kind of a current picture of the site today. It includes all the facilities in place to support that current focus. And really, it represents meaningful progress and visible progress. Let's cut that part. It represents meaningful and visible progress towards writing DFLAW's final chapter, which will get us to glass. So from a big picture perspective, we finished design in the summer of this year, June of 2019. All the major procurements are behind us. In fact, yesterday, it got picture snapped to me of our last major procurement arriving on site. So we've got all our major equipment and bulks to finish the plant. We're out of the construction business nearly, and we're making significant progress in startup and testing activities. So just to touch on construction for a bit, in May of this year, we completed the construction for the balance of facilities. We refer to that as BOF. It's 20 different utility systems needed to support the plant. Consider it the utility backbone for the facility. We've completed the construction in the analytical laboratory, low activity waste facility. And so what really remains from a construction standpoint, this kind of the significant piece of construction remaining is for our effluent management facility, or EMF. And that was a newer facility that we had in place for the DFLAW mission. So that's well underway. And if you go out to site today, you're going to see, the building's up, the siding's up, the roofing's almost complete, and we're really into the nitty-gritty of the remaining piping and electrical activities in there. And so tremendous progress. But this next slide, where we're at right now is we're really deep into the startup and rigorous testing phase of the project. Over the coming months, more and more of our facilities will be going through startup and commissioning, and that's to prepare for operations. And so a brief snapshot of that progress. For those utility systems that I mentioned, nearly 70% of them have already gone through that startup phase and have been handed over to our plant management team for commissioning. In the laboratory, over 75% of the lab systems have already been through startup and are with commissioning. And we recently accomplished a kind of a major integrated operation in the lab, which is to get our ventilation system running to provide cooling in there. So it might not sound like a big deal, but it's a big deal to have that up and running. And so I see in the next couple of months that we expect to have completed all the startup in both the lab and the balance of facilities. In our low activity waste facility, which is really the heart of DFLAW, nearly 85% of those systems are in startup, and a significant number of those have already been handed over to our plant management team as well for commissioning activities. And in the EMF, or the effluent management facility, even though I say that's kind of where we're at in the heart of construction right now, we've already started turning over systems into startups' hands, and even just this week, some of the smaller systems related to the powerhouse have been handed over to commissioning. So making a lot of forward progress in that area. So if you come out to site, you see a lot of the, I call it the landscaping, but a lot of the fencing, paving, and that groundwork being completed as well. So really good progress there. And kind of as we look forward, we have a good line of sight on that completion of the construction activities and startup. And so now it's really, getting that line of sight and focusing on a readiness and commissioning towards the finish line of the project. Some key activities include a hiring of our permanent plant staff and training them, and then moving into facilities to prepare for operations. So a couple examples of that. While we're completing the analytical laboratory today, we've been making use of an off-site laboratory at Columbia Basin College in Pasco. And we've had a group of our lab techs that have been there, and chemists that are already they're going through training, working on the procedures, developed and went through all our analytical methods. And so they're on pace to move into the laboratory actually later this month in November. And so that's a real exciting phase of the project to begin with, that another core kind of permanent plant staff coming on board. We also began hiring and training permanent plant staff who will operate the VIT plant. So we have 95 commissioning techs on board right now who are either in training or at our simulator building, or focused on running those utilities 24/7. We have 2 more waves of classes to go. The next wave we've hired them. They'll be starting in December. And this summer, several of you may have been out, we celebrated the completion and opening of our law annex building and control room with a ribbon cutting ceremony. And that's just a major accomplishment for the team. So as we're closing in on this chapter, the teamwork and collaboration and partnership is really key to the challenges in front of us to getting to completion. I can't overemphasize that. There's no easy button. I joke with John because he throws that video up and it shows the process and it looks really smooth and simple, especially when you fast forward some of your activities on site, and it's not easy. It's taking all of us as teams working together closely. That includes our business partners, building trades, state organizations like Ecology, and the community as yourself to help bring this plan online and make glass. It requires all of us. I think what we're sensing is different right now at this stage of it. The team I know out at the VIT plant really believing that we're getting done. You can sense something different in the air about it. I can sense it with my colleagues here. John hosted me and several of our leadership team out at the tank farms a couple weeks back, so we could just get a sense of the progress they're making and the challenges that they have. And I just think it's a really good collaboration, and our teams are working together on mission integration so that we're all ready at the same time to make glass. And so anyhow, it's an exciting time to be on the project, and for me, I consider it a real privilege to be here and to help make this next bit of history out at Hanford. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
Why, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So Mission Support Alliance is probably the unique one up here speaking about it, because we basically, our contract exists to enable John and Ty and Val to be able to execute their mission. And we do that through a various service delivery model that includes infrastructure, but it's a lot more than infrastructure. And it really is in those three main areas up there: integrated services, site-wide services, and then our physical systems and our physical services. And what that service model that we have laid out gives us the ability to one, enable the contractors. Two, it allows us to integrate the overall picture for Hanford, because there's a lot of things going on, and to make sure as those things integrate together, we're not stepping on each other's shoes. It gives us flexible service delivery, so you know what you're buying, when you're buying, and how you pay for that, and that gives transparency into the process. And that transparency really allows us to make better risk-based decisions on how to maximize the cleanup effort while minimizing the taxpayer dollars in that way. And then ultimately, as all that progress that Ty talked about and Brian talked about along that river, as we consolidate down inside to the 200 East and 200 West area on the Central Plateau, it allows us to consolidate our service delivery at the right time, so we're not overspending what we need and maximizing doing that. And when you look at the first one of our three main areas, our integrated service delivery model, there's a couple things that are really kind of important here. So we've been able to save a little bit through cost savings and cost avoidance, about $1.5 billion so far over the 10 years of this contract. That's really important, because what it's allowed us to do is to take a risk-based protocol and process to shift it into the right areas of emphasis to continue to do risk reduction. A lot of that river corridor activity was great progress that was made. It allowed us to free up to continue to do risk reduction on infrastructure on the tank farms, to be able to go to deal with that and deal with vapors and move forward, and it allowed Val to kind of continue to execute what she's doing. Where it becomes imperative for us from the current situation to the future situation is it really is now allowing us to go off and take our older infrastructure that's under the table that people may not see. For instance, all of our business management systems are very old and very archaic. And we're in a situation today in society where you need to be able to assimilate that data and be able to deal with that data very rapidly. So the business management system upgrades to be able to take us, we show here 50 applications down to 8. Really what it's allowing us to do is take a whole lot of information and data and assimilate it rapidly so we can make more rapid decisions as we condense the Hanford site down to the Central Plateau and are on top of each other, working around each other on a lot more regular basis. So that really becomes important for us as we move forward to line that up and allow these services that we provide to the other contractors, as well as information to be able to give to the Department of Energy and ourselves to make appropriate decisions that we need to do. In our support services, so take a great deal of pride and ownership in all the progress that we've made over the last 10 years. So way our services we work, we provide crane and rigging, we provide teamsters, we provide workers that are literally tied at the hip with the other contractors working in to make progress at PFP and along the river corridor and in tank farms. And so whenever they make great progress, we are in tide with that. And so take a great deal of pride and ownership in what we've been able to do. In our support service area, you can kind of see the demand is continuing to increase, but not at a substantial rate. But the difference is on those support services and those integrated services and where they're at is we have people spread across 586 square miles over the course of the last 10 years. As we've now made that progress around the river corridor and the outer areas, we're condensing those same amount of people, those 10, 12,000 people on the site right down into the Central Plateau area. And really what we're doing is we're condensing them down on the east side of 200 East area mainly as we go to operations and make glass. So now your infrastructure and your support and where your people are going on are all going to the same spot. So our ability to assimilate data and make decisions becomes very important, because a decision that was okay to be made over here in a vacuum because it was 45 miles down the road is no longer you're within 100 yards of the other group. So our ability to make those decisions with our support services to be able to give that. The one that I feel a great deal of pride, because I used to work at tank farms at WRPS in the past, is our self-contained breathing apparatuses, which we provide support to the other contractor at WRPS so they can go into the farms. They've made a great deal of progress on the ability to protect our workforce in a way that allows us flexibility to be able to go in and do work and remove that demand on SCBA bottles. So what you don't see there is the next part of this is a tip-off where that's going back down the other way, and we're no longer going to need to provide that service because they've effectively been able to protect our workforce and enable us to do better cleanup. So. And our physical services, which is where everybody kind of likes to focus in, and it's an important piece because you expect when you come to work that you have water, that you have power, that you have sewer, and that you can go effectively execute. And you can see just the usage demands in the different areas where we're going to increase. What we've been able to do through our service delivery model is really integrate, take all the information where the demands are at, both on increase in demands and how they're shifting to different locations and putting maybe an extra demand on one road only, where other ones now we can go turn off. And we've been able to integrate that together and ferret out. That's where we've been able to kind of ferret out that $1.5 billion in cost savings and cost avoidance. And then the last one is, down on the bottom down there is in our IT technology. So John talked earlier about the digital transformation that's going on tank farms. We're really doing that across the Hanford site. And really where we're at right now is taking all of this massive amounts of data we have and being able to assimilate it together rapidly so that we can actually make some decisions off of that. Additionally, making those decisions off that, we're also putting the infrastructure in place that at the right time actually allows us to start doing some machine learning capabilities, to where not only now can you make the decisions, maybe at some point in the future at the right time, you can actually use that to actually have the machine take the action for you to save you time and energy and efforts. As simple as reordering materials and equipment when we integrate that says we all need gloves across the site, and we just go reorder the gloves, versus a person right now is manually tracking it and manually ordering it. You take that person out of the equation so you can continue to free up and focus your attention and energy at the highest risk and highest evolutions. So what it's also doing is it's helping us attract and retrain the next generation of our workforce. Is about half our workforce is changing out, and right in the middle of that is attracting and retraining people to what we're doing that's actually on the front end of cleanup, and also infusing technology into that to track, retrain, and bring people in to help us continue to reduce our costs while we're making progress and moving forward with that. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to Brian.
So I think what you've heard really is a representation of the last 10 years, but I think it's important to recognize from a 30-year perspective what has been accomplished in the environmental cleanup mission has been truly impactful and frankly astounding. Almost 900 facilities demolished by the work done at the site. Over 1,300 waste sites remediated, as Ty mentioned before. Over 20 billion, with a B, gallons of groundwater treated, and again we mentioned 2.5 billion just this year. That work has been done safely, effectively, efficiently, and I think we've made tremendous progress at the site in the first 30 years of the cleanup. And as I look to the future, based on our history, not only during the environmental cleanup mission, but also during the 45 years of the national security mission, the innovation, the dedication, the commitment of the team at the Hanford site has created successes when confronted with numerous challenges over that protracted period of time. And that spirit, I think, is still here. As Val talked about it, we see it at the site today and the energy of the people there. I think it's here today, and I think that's going to be one of the things that certainly helps us continue the history of success, or the story of success at the Hanford site as we go forward. So really phenomenal, and that, again, that gives me certainly tremendous hope for the future and optimism that this is the right team and the model that we have going forward to be successful. If you look at the next 5 years, the first thing I think is most important to recognize is we're entering a period of dynamic change at the Hanford site. As a natural part of the government contracting process, we're in the process now and will soon be awarding contracts for, other than the waste treatment plant, all the other contracts on the site are going to be, are in the process of going to be awarded. So we're going to change out the contract leadership for the Central Plateau, the tank farms, and mission support in the next several months. That alone is a significant change, but also as you look to the farther into the future, we're also preparing the organization and the culture and the Hanford team for a transition to operations 24/7, 365, as we've talked about. And that is a fundamental shift in pace and focus that requires us to look at every element of how we do business, whether it's public works and our response times, through our management and leadership and decision-making processes, to make sure that we, as the managers and owners and leaders of the site, can operate at the pace at the site so we remain relevant as we move forward into the tank waste cleanup mission. If you look at DFLAW operations is large and in capitals for a very good reason. That's the centerpiece of what we focus on over the next several years. And it is a site-wide machine. It is not just about the waste treatment plant. Both of the DOE offices and every contractor on the site have a role in ensuring that we can deliver waste feed delivery and deliver glass from the vitrification plant as we go forward. And our overall operating model has to, again, evolve to support that pace of operations. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to continue risk reduction activities across the site as well. We still have work to complete at PFP and redox. We still have groundwater pump and treat. We have 5 pump and treat stations that are going to continue to operate and continue to reduce the risk of the river. We'll continue to work at the K-Basin to get the last 2 reactors cocooned. Of the 8 we're going to cocoon, the 9th is a national park, and we'll complete the 324 building as well in this window over the next 5 years. And there will be other risk reduction that we'll find as we progress the work. As Ty mentioned, there's other activities on the site that we have to continue to pursue, because as the work gets central, more and more connected between the contractors, issues that affect one contractor ultimately affect all and could affect our ability to execute the mission with direct feed low activity waste. And so we have to be mindful of that. And we're going to continue to increase and improve our infrastructure. The infrastructure has to support the operations, and we'll right-size that. We're not going to put infrastructure into areas we've already remediated, but we will have to ensure the infrastructure supports 24/7, 365 operations on the Central Plateau. We're going to continue our tank integrity programs to ensure the tanks continue to safely contain the waste until the point where we can remediate through vitrification. We're going to continue risk reduction, and we're going to continue to look for acceleration opportunities. This site, the mission is decades long in front of us. So we want to continue to find opportunities and employee opportunities that we can safely, efficiently, effectively, again, accelerate the mission and reduce the risk to the river, reduce the risk to the public, and reduce the risk to the environment. As we think about the enablers that the department's focused on with our contractors, there's 4 enablers for what will be required to be a part of our culture moving forward. One is the operations mindset. I talked about that a little bit, but it's going from a site where if we have a electrical issue in a demolition and decommissioning world, where we could come, it occurs on a Thursday, we can come back next Monday and go back to work. When we have 2 melters operating 24/7, 365, Our time horizon for responding is on the order of hours, not days, not weeks, not months. And so our entire operational posture and everything we do has to evolve to that. And that's a cultural transition, not just for the 350 federal employees, it's for the 8 to 9 to 10,000 on the site that are doing this work every day. John's team is going to have to be doing transfers multiple times a day, where we're doing sometimes a couple a month. So the pace there, the pace in Public Works, certainly at the waste treatment plant, and with Ty's team at the integrated disposal facility, both offices, all 4 contractors across the site, working to make the machine work, which we all focus very heavily on, but it's also making the team be prepared to function in a way that's fundamentally different. The second area we focus on is strengthen our relationships with all of our stakeholders. That includes the local communities and the governments, the regulators, labor, regional governments and communities, including Oregon, tribal nations, Hanford Advisory Board, Oregon Hanford Cleanup Board, state and national regulators, and Defense Nuclear Facility Safety Board, and I could go on. So we have to continue to work with all the key stakeholders so they understand how we're making progress safely, how we're making progress efficiently, how we're making progress effectively, and that every dollar that comes to the Hanford site is being used well to progress this challenging mission. And we're committed to that. We'll continue to do that. We've started Hanford Regional Dialogues again. We've had multiple, 3 in the last 6 months, sessions out on the site to connect directly from the department to the workforce to make sure that we're plugged in with the workforce as well. And we'll continue that outreach because the support of the stakeholder world that the Hanford lives in is critical to our success going forward. Third, we're going to be a fair and demanding customer as Department of Energy. We own the site. We are the only customer on the site. We're going to be knowledgeable. We're going to be engaged. We're going to work with our contractors. There'll be issues that we don't agree with. We're going to talk constructively and openly so together we can continue to move the mission forward. And I guarantee you we're not always going to agree. I guarantee you there's going to be issues that are going to be challenges for us to move the mission forward. But as a involved customer, a fair customer, a demanding customer, we're going to be in a place where we have world-class contractors working on this site. We have to get world-class performance, and to achieve that, we're going to be a world-class customer to support that. And lastly, really, that wraps all of it together is a high-performing team. Not just the department with our contractors, the department with all our stakeholders. We have to work together more effectively and efficiently than we ever have before to continue to make progress here. And this is a uniquely challenging site. But again, because of our history, because of the last 75 years, both the National Security Mission and the Environmental Cleanup Mission, I'm optimistic that we can continue to work together, continue to stay engaged with our key stakeholders, continue to support the progress that has been made and will continue to be made because it's important for the region, it's important for the state, and it's certainly important from a national perspective as well. And the Department of Energy is committed to that from our level, certainly, all the way up to the Secretary. If you look at our way ahead, I think it's bright. I think it is certainly challenging, but I think we're positioned today well for the challenges of the future. And it's as a result of the work we've done that we can ensure that we can be successful going forward across the entire spectrum of the work we do throughout the rest of the mission that we have in front of us. With that, I believe the presentation is complete. I certainly appreciate your time for all of us to be here today to represent where we are today and where we're going in the future. And we're certainly happy to take questions.
Thank you for joining us today and giving us this presentation. I just want to say that what I've learned today is that in today's environment and with all the technology, people want answers. And when they have questions, they think that it can be answered within minutes. But this operation obviously is going to take decades to complete. And it's just amazing to see your guys' vision. It's like goes in slow motion over many, many years, where minis look at it as basically something we want done right now. So I commend you for all the work that's been done. I know all the people at the Hanford site, and as a Hanford worker, we're proud of what we're doing out there, and I know it's a lot of work. But my question to you today is, how does funding look with the environment that we have at a national level and all the things happening in the world? What is the challenges to stay or to get the funding to stay on schedule with all this process?
I think the most important thing for us as a Hanford site and a team is to continue to deliver safe, efficient, and effective progress with every dollar we do receive. We enjoy great support from the Department of Energy and great support from the administration, and certainly great support from our congressional delegation to ensure that we're getting the funding we need. I think Congressman Newhouse has been out here often enough where he could probably give the tour on the site, and Rich may want to do that in the future. But we had 22 VIP tours this summer, which included Senator Cantwell, Congressman Newhouse, Congressman Schreier, up to and including the Secretary of Energy. And so I think our ability to show people the progress on a site that people really can't visualize unless they're here is an important part of that. And certainly the support we get from the community, the support we get from the state legislators is also very important. And so that's part of the outreach piece that we want to stay committed to. We need to continue to communicate how we're doing what we're doing and be open and transparent, get the feedback of the community to ensure that that support for the work that we do receive remains solid. We've also focused very heavily on an ethical culture at the site to ensure that when we talk about the site and we talk about there is a lot of money, $2.5 billion a year is a lot of money, we want to make sure that everyone has confidence, all of our stakeholders, local all the way through national, have confidence that this is a place where those dollars are going to be well spent and going to be protected by every member of the DOE team, whether it's the department or the contractors that are doing work here. We'll just have to continue to maintain that focus. So I think we get great support. I think it's, part of the reality here is this is an expensive effort, and we all recognize that, and we'll just continue to show the progress that continues to draw the support and the dollars, and I think we get great support for that.
Chuck Torelli, City of Kenwood. How can the community support you in your efforts and in real concrete ways? Not, you don't need a parade. You need what? You need letters to our representatives. What do you need to be successful? And where do you think you can be more helpful in informing us of those needs?
And I'll start, and then I think certainly the other members of the team here will talk. But I think we do enjoy great support from the community already. I think part of that effort that we place is making sure that we're engaged with the community, communicating our progress, and making sure that we're getting the community's concerns and priorities factored in to our decision making and our actions going forward. The broader issue is, the community's done a great job of making the Tri-Cities a great place to live. And so as we look to the future and we look to the challenges we face, we have if you look at this panel, not including Val, we're a mature group. And so, so we do have an aging workforce, a lot of experience on the site, a lot of people retiring. I had one of my fact reps retired this week from the site. And so we are losing that generation of people that have been here for a while. And to attract the next generation, they have to recognize that the work at Hanford, they can have a great career, a diverse career, doing something important to the local communities, the region, and the nation, and live in a great place. I've lived in a lot of places, in Hanford, and the Tri-Cities is a great place to live. And so as long as we can continue to do that and support WSU Tri-Cities and support degrees and work there, because parents in the local communities, believe it or not, usually want their kids to live here. And if we want to go and recruit and retain, we can go and be very successful at WSU Tri-Cities and bringing people out to the site as well, not just from a federal perspective, but across all the contractors as well. And so that's the support that is very helpful and very constructive. And I think, again, continuing to ensure your voices are heard at the state level and certainly the national level always provides support for what we're doing here. Others as well?
Yeah, I'd just like to add is I think one of the things that we have to do better, and I think one of these items that we have is succinctly showing and articulating the progress we are making, because this is a long mission, and in a society that is very need information now or want information now, we got to be able to succinctly provide you that data, and some of these pictures and some of these things, there's an intent for us to go off and better to do that. I think the community has always extremely well supported the backbone of what Hanford's doing. That's a way we can help enable you to help us collectively. And the second part of it is, I think from a community perspective, is those people, those kids that we're bringing up through WSU that we're trying to keep here, is Tri-Cities has a great science-based, technology-based infrastructure at Hanford, at PNNL, at Lamb Weston, and a lot of the infrastructure around it and the people around it. And so we're collectively, I think, together need to make sure we need to, on a large scale, integrate it as a community to make sure that we go off and continue to encourage those kids. It doesn't necessarily have to be at Hanford, right? We're all kind of fighting for the same type of people. And so that need is going to be large in the near future. And so collectively together, I think we need to leverage our capacity and capability to encourage young kids to get educated in a field that they're choosing, whether it's Hanford or PNNL or Lamb Weston, and potentially in all of it as we change our skill dynamics over a period of time.
This year, our community celebrated the 75th anniversary of the Hanford site, and I would like to thank all of you for your participation in that celebration. It was very exciting. We had people from a long ways away that came and just were so thrilled that it was organized and that we had that opportunity to look back. So thank you. As we go forward with contract transition, our community elected officials find that there's a lot of uncertainty. People don't know if their jobs are going to continue. Can you tell us how you're working to plan for that transition and to keep things moving forward?
I think that's for me. Yeah, absolutely. We recognize that the contract transitions, it's a natural part of government business. And so the contractors that we have on the site today, were likely some members of the contract teams here today were here at the last contract transition. And the contractors focus very heavily on being able to complete a scope of work, complete a time where they're in the role, finish strong, and turn over the work to the next contractor, so to progress from that perspective. And I think they, in the work we've done to date, I think with John and Ty and Bob, I think that's a commitment that we see already in the workforce. We also plan, as a department, we've been planning on the transitions for months to make sure that we have worked our way through the potential risks and challenges. Again, this is not new. We haven't done it here in 10 years, and we're in the 11th year of 10-year contracts. And so I've got two very strong members of my team, Mark French on the Central Plateau and Steve Pfaff for the tank farms. And they started working months ago to develop the transition plans for the new contracting model. And it's really multi-phase, but I think from the early phase perspective, we have a very good plan and a very good set of members of our team committed to support the success. And we actually have a training program that we're going to start in the next 2 weeks for every federal employee to spend hours of training going through what these new contracts look like and what their role is to ensure on the federal side we're ready to make that transition. On the labor side, I too was sensitive to the potential that there could be unrest and concern. Part of the reason we went out as a DOE leadership team in one session in June in town and then 2 sessions in September out on the site was to provide accessibility to the workforce to come and talk to DOE leadership as the owners of a site to make sure if there were concerns about from their perspective that we may not be aware of, they had the opportunity to communicate with us. The good news is we didn't get a lot of attendance. We had about 60 to 70 people across all 3 sessions. And most of the conversations were focused on traffic safety and things like that. So that told me, number one, the contractor leadership at the table here has done a very good job of engaging with their workforce, talking about what's coming, talking about the fact that Hanford transitions have happened before, and these transitions will happen again. And there's a fair number of people who have been through it, and leveraging that experience to make sure the workforce understood that the work will continue This is not a sea change event. You know, we have plenty of projects on the site that are going to have to continue. The work's going to continue, and most of the transition occurs at the very highest levels of the contractor leaders. And so I think those factors together have made it clear to me that the department are ready for the transition, the contractors are ready for the transition, the labor force is ready for the transition, and we're going to work every day once we get into transitions to look for those indicators that we have problems and concerns and slow down to make sure we're successful. I've talked to each of the contractor presidents on the day when the awards are announced. If the workforce is distracted, don't work. Spend that day, focus on safety, answer the questions of the workforce, and go back to work when you're ready. We can't afford to have someone to get hurt in this transition. Because that certainly would mar what is a natural part of government contracting and put the Hanford site in a position that I think none of us want. We want everybody that's participating in the site today to see the successes and be part of the successes in the future. Val, I'm sure, will be working with us because most of the interfaces of all the contractors touch the waste treatment plant. And so the Bechtel team will continue to be engaged with the contractors to make sure those interfaces are well managed as we go forward. And again, this is a process that we've executed in the past. I've not on this side of the table, but I have seen it in other places, and we're ready for it, as ready as we can be, and we'll continue to work the problem as we transition to make sure it's done safely and effectively.
Other questions? I'll ask a follow-up. You mentioned transportation, and a concern of the Hanford workforce is obviously the commute and the backup of traffic during the commute. And that comes to our elected officials in terms of what are you doing, what is your planning effort? And we do have a planning effort which is coordinated through the Council of Governments. One of the questions that comes up is why can't we stagger the start time of the Hanford workforce? And the answer we always get back is, well, crane and rigging needs to start at a certain point in time, and that has to be consistent through the site. As you're looking to the future, are there opportunities for staggered start times?
Can I address that, Brian?
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, so I'll address it first and foremost. So part of our responsibility is kind of looking at that traffic pattern, traffic flow, where folks are going at. And really, as it sits today, we're probably at the biggest choke point of the process as we have, because most of our staff are right now on a 410s day shift, and they're hitting that kind of same time frame. The operational pace that we're talking about that Brian has been mentioning, and we've been having this discussion about how we change that culture, actually benefits us in this case, because we really now are going to start distributing our workforce out on a more regular basis, on a 24/7 basis. Hoisting and rigging, crane and rigging is a good example of that. They're on 410s, they're tied to 410s and provide direct support and enable the other Hanford contractors that are on those 410s. But as John starts shifting more and more to 24/7 operations, and Ty starts going to 24/7 operations, we're actually going to start distributing out our workforce. Now, the unique part that we got to do that fine balance with is we're distributing them out on the 24/7 basis, but we're also condensing them down onto certain roads and some road traffic that we have. By state standards, those road traffic area patterns are actually in the green and doing very well. And you start thinking, oh, well, seems weird, right? We hear about that. Culturally, we're not used to that, but when you compare it to Seattle area, where they're going 20 miles an hour and we're going 45, we culturally have to deal with that. But as we condense ourselves down, there are projects lined out in the next 2 to 5 years that actually goes out to those roads and adapts those roads now to that change in traffic flow. And last but not least, coupled with, as we now start bringing more supplies on a 24/7 basis to feed the melter on a regular basis to balance all that out. And so we have a larger strategy plan laid out when those, I'll say, choke points on those roads need to be upgraded and put in place. And the last but not least is one of the things that the Department of Energy has asked us to look at is, are there opportunities as we become on a more 24/7 rigorous basis that our people become more predictable in the times that they're at the site working? Are there opportunities either leverage van pools or benefits with the Ben Franklin Transit to leverage some of that in the future as we go with that? So we're looking at that right now.
I'm Bob Larson with the Port of Benton, and I'm just wondering on the VIT plant when it starts, is it operating with oil and not getting the pipe across the Columbia River and taking natural gas. My understanding, it is so much cheaper, but I just wondered what happened on that.
Yeah, at this point, there's no plans for natural gas for use. We're focused on the DF-LAW is oil-based, and so that's the current plan. One of the issues I think you recognize is we're in the process now of looking what the high-level waste treatment option going forward may be. We went into an analysis of alternatives for the high-level waste portion of the mission in the future, and so certainly one of the options that's there is to complete the pretreatment and facility and the high-level waste facility as they currently exist. But there may be other options that we may employ to start treating the waste maybe sooner and in a more cost-effective way. And so it wasn't ripe to make the decision about gas, and we didn't see that as a near-term issue. So it was not something we're pursuing at the current time.
And this is really kind of a nit question and maybe way too early in the process, but when you all go to round-the-clock operations, are all the contractors expected to go on the same 12-hour or 24-hour shift, or are you going to have guys on 12s, guys on 8s, guys on this? And is there going to be, I mean, I've been through both those worlds. There's always difficulty with, I'm on 12 hours, you're on 8 hours rotating. Boy, you're the crew I wanted, but you're no longer available because you've just shifted out of my range. Is that being looked at right now?
Well, I think what we see is the services that are necessary for the waste treatment plant to operate will be tuned to 24/7 operations. There will be other work on the site that doesn't have to be tuned to 24/7. And so part of what we're going to look at from an overall governance model perspective and working with mission support and the future contractor is determine which services and projects are tied to waste treatment plant, tied to 24/7, which are not, and we'll stagger it appropriately to make sure that we're getting the right source. I think the underlying challenge or the underlying opportunity for us is that we're going to have to be much more integrated, much more, and communicate much more frequently and effectively, and all have a situational awareness around the site every day that is a magnitude higher than we necessarily have to now. And we're going to make sure that the governance model and those programs and processes are in place so that when we get to that point, we're operating at the pace of the site where it needs to be operated. Again, we'll tailor it to what we need.
Thank you so much. This has just been an incredible opportunity for our organization to have all of you in one place. And the information that you shared is heartening and exciting, and you're doing an amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
We have. Yeah.